Alright, morning everyone. It's Ron again from Manassas. Stayed at my sister's last night. Got my vitamins ready to go. My 7-Eleven coffee, which I think kicks the shit out of Starbucks any day. But what kicks the shit out of 7-Eleven coffee is just a plain old tub of Folgers that you brew yourself. Got the Stingray hat going. It's going to take me probably about 45 minutes to get to the place I'm going to be showing you all today, or at least the first place, and I will catch up with you when I get there. Okay, so I made it. I am now in Aldie, Virginia, which is a small village on Route 50. So what I'm doing today is retracing, or not retracing, but going to take you around to some of the sites of the Gray Ghost, or Colonel John Singleton Mosby, who was a Confederate ranger that used to harass Union supply lines and perform raids against different factions of the Union Army that was going through Northern Virginia. The area that he covered is vast. I'm only going to take you to a few certain sites. But the area he used to cover stretched from Leesburg to Carytown, West Virginia, down south to Culpeper, down to Stafford County. So right now I'm in the heart of the area where him and his rangers performed most of their raids and supply line cuts and power line telegraph wire cuttings. And right now I'm at the old mill, finally a mill that hasn't been burnt down, in Aldie. So we are in one of the areas that he used to frequent, and planning and meeting a lot of his other rangers in his brigade. He was appointed to this position of colonel by Jeb Stuart, who saw the capability and the knowledge of what he could bring to the table for the Confederate Army. So right now I'm gonna head on up the road a little bit, and also within this video we'll do some side notes of other topics that are interesting to me, because again it's all about me. Anyway, also I tend to cuss a lot, so I'm going to try to be aware of my language, but you know, with me being overseas all the time, that's just part of my vocabulary, but I'll try to be cognizant of what I say. So I'll be back here shortly. Okay, so as I'm walking back to the car, just some other things about John Singleton Mosby. I did a lot of research on my own of him when I was in college, and very limited information was available about him during that time. But some of the facts, he was wounded multiple times throughout the course of the Civil War, and I'll be taking you to one of those sites here shortly. He was also the last officer to surrender after Lee had surrendered and Joseph Johnston surrendered in North Carolina. Mosby and his rangers were on their way down to meet up with Johnston in North Carolina to continue the fight. But as he got towards Salem, Virginia, down in the Roanoke, Virginia area, word got to him that Johnston had also surrendered, so he also formally surrendered in Salem. He was pardoned a few years later, took up law practice in Warrenton, Virginia, and then was appointed by President Grant to become a counselor in China for export tariffs, and basically never became any monetary, I don't want to say rich, but self-sufficient, because he died in a boarding house in Washington, D.C., and he's buried in Warrenton Cemetery, his hometown. So, or not his hometown, but a town he called home, because he was born down in Powhatan County, Virginia, and migrated up here to practice law before the Civil War. So, okay, I'm going to take you to the next location. It could be about Mosby, or it could be about someone else. I'll just stay tuned with me, and we'll see which one comes first. Okay, so side note here. I'm on my way to down 50 right now, towards this other town for Mosby. Just beyond that tree, the tree line, is a house. May 24th, 1995. The day before a tragic event that would change an actor's life forever and would soon take his life about a decade later. Christopher Reeves leased the house here, and we are in the middle of what is known as Virginia Piedmont, which is the heart of horse country. Right here is where he practiced on his horse the day before the tragic event that took place at an equestrian event in Culpeper, Virginia. So he would practice here the 24th of May for the event the next day, and what would follow was that accident that would render him a quadriplegic, basically bringing an end to his acting career, and I think about a decade later, his life, due to the complications of the accident. I always liked Christopher Reeve. He was a great actor. I still think, not for being Superman, I think my favorite movie of his was Death Trap with Michael Caine. So I thought this was an interesting place. This was the practice field. And again, behind the tree line over here was his house. I think if you blow up the screen or something like that, I can't seem to zoom in, but you can see the top of the house, the chimney. That's the house he used to lease here during the spring to fall time frame, so he could run his horses. It is now called Fox Chase Farms, owned by a private company, strictly to raise horses for steeplechasing, which is a big event through here in this area of Virginia. So continue on down the road. Okay, I'm in now Middleburg, Virginia. Why Middleburg? Well, when this area was surveyed in the late 1600s, 1690s, a surveyor by the name of George Washington deemed it in the middle way between Washington, D.C. and Winchester, Virginia. This also was the site of many Revolutionary War, British and American Army maneuvers and headquarters. One being right here, which is the Red Fox Inn. This was a major headquarters and clandestine meetings for many soldiers for the British Crown and for the Revolutionary Army. It was also a major meeting place for Colonel Mosby and Jeb Stuart that would plan out the raids for coming months. Town isn't that big. It's ungodly expensive to live here. That yellow house right there, and on the top, not the whole thing, just half of that. So the window on the side to the right and the two windows in the front, that costs about $2,800 US a month to rent that, not including utilities. So this place is money, 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 money. And there's a lot of rich people that live around here. Elizabeth Taylor has a place here. The founder of the Mars Bars, or the Mars Corporation, lives here. Also in this is also a bed and breakfast. Robert Duvall used to stay here. Tom Cruise stays here. A lot of other actors stay here. This place just reeks and reeks of money. So I'm going to continue on down the road and go to the next site for Colonel Mosby. Okay, correction. And a little bit of modification of what I said about George Washington in Middleburg. Middleburg was there before George Washington came through. However, it wasn't named Middleburg at that time, as George Washington was doing his surveys for the Crown at that time. He submitted papers indicating that that area was the middle way in between Washington, D.C., more specifically Alexandria, Virginia, and Winchester at that time. So I am right now at the Trinity Church in Upperville, the village of Upperville, Virginia. And I'm walking back this way because back here, there's an old house, because back here is where Jeb Stuart commissioned the Rangers and Colonel Mosby to as an active regiment within the Confederate Army. Now, I only take about 70% of what is written on Wikipedia as truth, and I'm walking on gravel, it's not potato chips. I only take about 70% of the truth. Again, I've done a lot of research back on this when I was in college. And after speaking with a lot of other experts on the Civil War, it was determined to me and brought to my attention that back on this field, prior to the cemetery being built, and I'm not going to go all the way in, but around that wall is where Mosby assumed the command of Mosby's Rangers. So here's a back part of the Trinity Church in Upperville. Upperville is probably about 12 miles west of Middleburg, still on Route 50. So where I'm going to try to find next, and I have an idea of where it's at, is around 1864. General Mosby was thought to be mortally wounded while having dinner as a guest in a house in Rectortown, Virginia, which is somewhere that direction. I'm going to try to find the house. I have a good idea of where it's at and some other things that took place in Rectortown called the Lot. And I'll explain that when I get there. All right, so pause again and continue on.